Awesome. So once again, welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Today's topic, it's really straightforward. It's how to build a remote team successfully. Now, at the end of this call, you're going to be able to understand what you need to do in order to make not just a team, but a team that works and works efficiently. That's the purpose of the call. So first of all, we're going to be talking about why you should listen to me. Number two, I'll go straight into the reasoning behind, or the system behind how to make a remote team work, which it's the CAT system. Number three, what you should not do, what things you should avoid, and then we're going to end up with a space for questions and answers. That's pretty straightforward. By the end of this call, again, you're going to understand exactly what is needed in order to have a remote team that is efficient, that it's operating, and that it's producing, which is what we all want. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So first of all, for those of you who maybe are watching this on YouTube or on this call and they don't maybe know much about what we do here at Allsikes, we have more than 30 years of combined experience, all the team here at Allsikes. In terms of remote work, that said, it could be freelancing, it could be independent contractor, nearshore, offshore, pretty much every single model, you name it, we have probably done it or have somebody in the team who has done it in the past. Again, throughout multiple industries. Myself, I'll get more into details of that, but I can tell you customer care, track and trace, logistics, technology, marketing, real estate, insurance, so on and so forth. So when it comes to Allsikes, we pretty much have a broad spectrum of people who have been in the remote space, so we definitely know what we're talking about. And just so you know, we have somebody in the team that has been around even before, that has been working remotely even before Upwork even existed. That being said, I'm going to tell you a bit more about me. For those of you who are here in the call, maybe don't know me, my name is Sergio. I'm the managing partner here at Allsikes. Just so you know, I have a background that is quite wide. I've worked in operations on logistics, full truckload, freight brokerage, in real estate, property management, marketing, masterminds, and customer care throughout my 10 years of experience. I've also been heavily invested in technology in the past 3 years, working for SaaS companies, startups, working in stock augmentation as well, and product development myself. I've developed successfully 3 products. And well, just so you know, my ethos is knowledge gains its true value when it's shared, which is why here we want to share with you what we know, so you guys can have the best out of our knowledge. That being said, let's get right into the system, the CAT system, which is pretty straightforward. How to make a remote team successful. It doesn't matter if your team, it's just one person, if it's 2 person, if it's 100 person. This system is going to work pretty much for all over the board. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what role your team member is currently in or your team members are currently in. If they are virtual assistants, if they are operations managers, if they are chief of staff, or whatever role they're in, if they're remote, this is what you need to know in order to make sure that you're getting the most out of that person or that group of people. So the first thing, it's quite obvious. It's communication. As you can imagine, communication is going to be different from when you are in person than when you are working remote. How is it different? It's different because when we are in person or we're seeing face-to-face or we're talking face-to-face, there's much more cues that you can follow in terms to understanding what that person is trying to say. If you see their facial expressions, you're going to understand what type of mood they're in right now. If they like what you said, or if they are happy, if they're not happy, if they're content or not. When we're talking about remote work, sometimes that is lost because you're seeing probably text only, or you're seeing voice only, or in some cases, you're not even getting an answer. You're just seeing the work getting done, but not necessarily communicating. So today, what I want to focus on is on communication in remote teams. And the mantra for this is don't communicate to be understood, but rather communicate so as not to be misunderstood. There's a huge difference there. And in order to achieve that, in order to achieve the not being misunderstood part, there are three main things that I want to show you that has been proven for us to work. The first one is the three C's method. Communication should always have three C's. It should always be clear, concise, and complete. What does clear mean? And of course, there's a reason why we need to define this, because clear might be something for you, but in another culture, it might be something different. And we'll get into the cultures in a bit, but clear means making sure what you want to say is communicated in a way that it cannot be misunderstood, in a way that the person cannot get confused with something else, meaning that the person knows exactly what you mean with what you're saying. So clear means plain English, no fancy words, just making sure that they understand what is that you're trying to accomplish or what is it that you're trying to say. Concise, try to communicate that in the least amount of words possible. And complete, including all the details that you think are necessary in order to make sure that communication goes across. Keep in mind, especially when you have remote teams that are on different countries, that communication is different in the United States than maybe Argentina, than maybe Brazil, Philippines. And I'll show you a tool that is going to help you assess how different it is and what to keep in mind and what to look for, depending on where your team members are located. But I can tell you that the United States culture, it's oftentimes a low context culture. So if you are a patient, if you are a business owner, if you're the CEO of a company and you have probably a virtual assistant, you have a marketing assistant, or any sort of independent contractor working for you as of right now, when you provide certain directions, certain instructions, if you tell them to do something, you'll notice that depending on where this person is from, there's going to be a difference in how they respond to that particular instruction. Going back to what I was saying, the United States is a low context culture, meaning that you usually provide least or less information compared to other countries. I am from Colombia. I tend to over communicate when it comes to saying what is it that I want. So if I give instruction, it could be, for example, hey, I would like to buy a gift for my mother. It's the Mother's Day. Mother's Day is coming up soon. Can you please take care of that? I want it to be between 50 USD all the way to 150 USD, including shipping. I don't want it to be perishable, so no flowers, no food. And pretty much I'll tell you everything in that particular message that I'm sending to my VA. In the United States, in the other hand, Colombia, it's a high context culture, so I'll give a lot of details. You'll notice that business owners are going to give much less information. So they're going to say something like, hey, please look for a gift for my mother. It's Mother's Day. They are probably not going to tell you the budget. They're probably not going to tell you what you specifically examples of what you like or stuff like that, because it's culturally different. So if you have somebody that is from Colombia in your team and you tell them, just buy me a gift, they're going to be pretty, lost. They're going to be probably asking you questions like, what's the budget? How big, how low you want me to go? What type of gift does your mother like? Stuff like that. So there's a difference in that. In order for you to better assess this and in order to better understand this, I'm going to share with you a really interesting tool that is going to be able to help you. So let me share my screen real quick. Here, this is probably going to be watched by people all over the world. So this is the Hofstede, the Culture Factor Group. It's actually the website, but Hofstede 5 Dimensions of Culture. And here you can compare cultures. And we're going to be focusing only on one particular dimension of culture. But we are going to put here United States. We're going to convert it to Argentina because I know, Chris, you have somebody in Argentina. We're going to convert it to Colombia because I'm Colombian myself. So we can have a comparison here. It's going to tell you specifically what it means, but we're going to be focusing on mainly on one particular dimension right here, which is indulgence. So how much of indulgence is different. So as you can tell, in the United States, it's higher. Actually, in the United States, in the middle. In Colombia, it's the highest, and in Argentina, it's closer to the United States. There's a lot of difference when it comes to culture. If we compare also and add to the queue the Philippines being blue now, there are a few things that are going to be different, and it explains a lot of things. For example, if you see the blue one, the Philippines power distance, it's one of those dimensions that tells you how likely is the person to come back to you and say, I disagree with something when given instruction. If you see the Philippines, it's a country that has a high power distance, meaning that they are used to being told what to do. In case that you have ever had the chance of working with somebody in the Philippines, you'll notice that when you give them instruction, they're not probably not going to ask questions. They're going to get them done at the best of their extents. They're not going to be, coming back to you and telling you another route just because of their power distance. However, Colombia here in gray, Argentina here in orange are probably closer to the United States, right, compared to the Philippines. But yeah, I'll leave this on the description, share it with you on the recording of this, so you can take a closer look at this and maybe understand more what's different on the culture of the United States compared to the culture of the team that you're trying to build. Now, coming back to communication, which is the topic that we're talking about, there's a second tool that we're going to be optimizing, our second strategy that we want to focus on when we are talking about communication. And that is the tools that we use in order to communicate. You need to optimize and be clear in terms of what tools you use, when, and why. My recommendation, just stick to two. You have emails, you have SMS, you have Slack, you have Zoom, you have FaceTime. There's a bunch of means of communications that we can use on this day and age. But just because we have a lot of tools, it doesn't mean we have to use all of them. And this is something that's going to help you keep yourself organized. I would recommend that you always go for tools that make sure that communication is clear, concise, and complete, while at the same time keeping a record of the things that you are talking and that you're discussing with your team. What are the preferred tools when it comes to remote work? Email, it's always going to be champion. It has downfalls. For example, there's going to be a lot of emails, so you're going to need a system in order to keep things organized. SMS, it's great if your team is involved in day-to-day operations, meaning you need to talk about things happening as they happen. The problem with SMS is that it's really hard to go back and see what happened, when it happened, and why it happened. Slack, it's great. It has a great platform. It's pricey though, so you have to keep that in mind. Zoom, FaceTime, it's great for face-to-face, but not necessarily it's going to help you keep record of what it's being said and why. So choose two. Email could be one. FaceTime could be the other, just to sync. Stick to those two and make sure that everything is organized and clear, not just communicated, but also you can go back to it. Now, what is something that you must have every time that you communicate when you're thinking the communication of your team? You should always have an SOP, and this is something that if you are the owner of a company, if you have a team already, or you're thinking about having a team, or just hire somebody and you don't have an SOP per se, this is the first task that you should be asking your BA to do. Create an SOP of everything I'm about to show you. Standard operating procedure, meaning you're going to document what I'm teaching you just so it's organized. You can go back to it and we can use it as a rule of thumb. So we don't have to rely on memory. We don't have to rely on perception. We don't have to rely on what was said at any given time. We can just go back to an SOP and say, okay, this is what is on the SOP. This is what is true. This is what we're going to go with. Great first task for a new virtual assistant or new hire that you have on your team. SOPs are great for procedures, but it's not going to cover everything that you do on an organization, which is also great to have libraries. Libraries are a group of assets that you have in your organization. For example, in the case of Chris, you have a lot of footage of things that you have done in the past, of works that you have done in the past. It could be B-roll, it could be raw footage, it could be, I don't know, actual finished products that you have sold in the past. In the case of videos, if your company is more in the marketing space, it could be a library of ads that have worked in the past. It could be a library of ads that have not worked in the past, libraries of advertisement that you have done for a particular company, so on and so forth. So all those assets that you have created, all those things that you have come up with, those should be organized, those should be created, and those should be standardized, just so the new hire can go back and see, okay, this is what is good, this is what I can copy, this is what I can go with, regardless of what space you're working in. And it is all organized in a single place. Libraries can also include multiple SOPs. It could be organized by process, by branch, or whatever you want to make sense out of it. If you have a virtual assistant, and only if you have a virtual assistant that's probably working with you, maybe you are asking them things that are not just work related, but also related to your personal life. Maybe they're taking care of your inbox. You're receiving things from work, but also from family members, from your son, from your wife, anyone in particular, that it's not necessarily work related. It's always great to have a communications rules engine. A communication rules engine, it's in between an SOP and a library. It's basically in a spreadsheet, a really simple thing to do, where you can actually say, when this happens, I want this to be the action that you proceed. So if my wife sends me an email, I want you to let me know via SMS, or I want you to bookmark it and leave it on top of my inbox, or I want you to do something else. If my son says something about his soccer practice, this is what I want you to do. If this team member says something about X procedure, this is what I want you to do. That gives a cadence, that gives pretty much a system, so people who is taking care of your personal life as well as your work life to understand what is it that you want accomplished. And it's really great, really simple, really cheap way to keep things organized. You can always go back to it and say, okay, let's change this, it's no longer working, or let's adjust this, I want more of this, this is what I think it's working, and it's working better. Overall, just before we finish communication, as you can see, you don't need fancy tools in order to keep communication in line. With an email and space for FaceTime or having a meeting, it's more than enough to keep your communication clear, concise, and complete. Really important. Make use of the free tools. Fathom, it's a great free tool that we have available that is going to give you summaries of the meetings that you have, so that takes away one of the downfalls of having FaceTime meetings that not necessarily notes are being taken, or nobody's taking notes. A tool like Fathom can actually take notes for you. Awesome. So that's the C on CAT. Let's move forward to the next one. Accountability. It's the A. And here the mantra for accountability is, if you are not measuring it, you are not managing it. So clear metrics is what transform intentions into results. When expectations are visible and performance is measurable, team members take ownership of their work. And leaders can support, not just supervise. I've seen a lot of people make a lot of mistakes when it comes to accountability. especially when it comes to awarding things that they should not be awarding. For instance, if you have a marketing assistant that it's pretty much creating social media content, there's no need for you to put a bonus on time checking for that person or assistance on that person, like making sure that that person is checking in on time every single day and giving them a bonus on that. That's not what you want to measure. That's not what you want to award to make sure that somebody's checking in on time. What you should always be measuring and what should always be managing, it's performance, and performance that benefits your business, benefits the output of your business. If you're struggling with sales, you want to award those activities that that person is doing that help you get more sales. Not the time that they spend doing it, but the quality of the output or the quantity of the output that they're doing. So make sure you're awarding not the metric, but the milestone. Things that help or that are beneficial to you, not necessarily just a number that they can ramp up doing more of, and that's it. How is this accomplished? There are four key ways of doing that, and it's really straightforward. Number one, it's focusing on results, not the hours, not the time spent, but build trust and drive, focusing on what the output of those hours were. For example, if you have a new hire that it's taking care of, again, creating social media content, it's not important how much time it takes for them or how much time they work on your project, but what you want to be measuring is how can I make this person first with something that I want, something that is up to my standards. That's the first thing. You want to teach them what your standard is and pretty much help them accomplish that. Maybe, and it's a big maybe, the first few weeks it's going to take them 2 hours to get it done the right way. You have to find a way to measure how long it takes for them to get to that point. From that point on, what you should be pushing them to do with rewards, and by the way, rewards doesn't necessarily mean money. It just means acknowledging that they're doing something good or, giving them a heads up, saying, hey, you're doing a great job, but rewarding them and saying, hey, well, I think you can do this better. Let me help you do this better. How can we go from 2 hours to get a collateral done? Let's try to find a way of making it 1 hour. So focus on the result of getting things done by the quality you want in a timely manner. Number two, measure. It's really important. How are you going to get to that if you're not measuring how much time it takes to that person to get the results that you want? How are you going to measure that if you're not measuring the quality of the output that they're doing? If they're just creating content just for the fun of it, and you're not checking if the content is something of your liking or not, or it might not be necessarily something that you like or not, but you're not measuring the impact it has on your social media. You're not measuring how many likes that particular piece of content is generating. You're not measuring the engagement that has. So without metrics, there's no way to track progress, spot issues, or scale to what works. Measure the things that matter because measuring equals managing it. Number three, defining roles and expectations. Clarity eliminates the confusion and empowers ownership. If they don't know exactly what they need to do, it's going to take them a long time in order to find that sweet spot that you're looking for. Again, you have to communicate concisely, clearly, and completely. Make sure that they understand what is that you want. If possible, give them an example, give them a guideline, something they can go with. It's always great, especially if if you have somebody, for example, that it's taking care of a particular process. It's always great to show them and not just show them, but record or have a way of showing and keeping it in record how something is done. It could be a Loom video, it could be a video and a gift, whatever it is. where you explain how you want something done and how you do it, focusing always on the result, not necessarily on the process itself. Define that, make it clear, and make sure that they understand what the expectation is. Number four, understand rewards. This is something that I mentioned earlier. Reward milestones, meaning the accomplishment, not just the metric, not just, hey, I just completed my first 10 pieces of content, or I just completed my first 10 months at this organization. Instead, focus on, hey, my first post that reached 100 likes, or the first video that I edited that was sold, stuff like that. The milestone, not just the metric. Meaningful progress beats empty productivity, and that's always going to be like that. Now, the T on the CAT systems stands for traceability. What's traceability? It's basically track and trace, being able to create a digital trail of what is being done. It starts simple, single source of truth. You have to avoid scatter information across chats, emails, and all the means of communication. The key here is, if you're going to have if you're going to have a system in place in order to provide projects, in order to provide tasks, in order to provide feedback, whatever it is, it has to be clear that it's going to be just one means of communication. In my case, I've worked as a virtual assistant in the past. What I have seen work for me as a virtual assistant is keeping everything via email. So every single time I receive an email from the person I used to work with, the CEO of a company, I knew it was a task. So the task was an email. I have all the information on the email. If I needed to, oh, it's not sharing the screen. 1 second. There you go. Sorry about that. So the task is the email. All the information is on the email. If I need to ask questions, I'll ask questions on that same email thread. Once I complete the task, I'm going to reply to that same email thread. Once that task it's review and maybe the person has feedback, I'm going to go back and it's going to be on that same email chain. And everything is going to be regarding to that task on one particular email chain. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case of email for you. If you think something else works, for example, some people choose to use Monday.com, Notion. Other than that, make that the single source of truth. Everything on one single place, and make sure that you understand everything is there and that people can go back and see, okay, this is where things are at. This is the trail of thought that I'm following, all the changes that happen, so on and so forth. Which takes me to the second part of this point, which is version control and documentation. So understand how to always make sure who did what, when, and why. If you ask somebody to do something, you need to find a way, and it could be email, it could be some other tool, to understand when you told them to do that, when they replied they were going to do it, or they acknowledged they were going to do it, when was the first time that they came back to you with the solution. If there were any issues, make sure that you understand why there were any issues and that all of that is documented on one single place in a single source of truth. Again, who, when, and why needs to be clear. Same goes if you're using Notion, if you're using any other project management tool. It's not enough with having the project management tool. It's important to have the accountability, understanding, I'm going to take care of this, you're going to take care of that. This is where my responsibility ends. This is where your responsibility begins. Number three, simplify. Especially if you're an owner, which most of you here on this call are. You're probably a solopreneur, you're probably an entrepreneur, you have a small team, you have a big team, you have a team on site, you're starting to have a team that's working remotely. Simplifying is really easy. There are only 4 things that you can do in your business. 1 is working. 2, it's delegating. 3rd, it's automating. And the 4th, it's eliminating process. So make sure that you are working on what's better or what's increasing the output of maximizing profit for your business or helping you improve long term. That's, you have to work on what gives you money. There's it's as simple as that. Now, there are going to be things in your business because you cannot do everything by yourself. There are going to be things in your business that are really important, probably not urgent. You can delegate those. There are going to be things in your business that are really important, probably urgent, probably not urgent. You can automate those as well. If it's repetitive, you can automate it with a SAP. You can automate it with Make, or within the CRM that you're using. You can find a way of making sure that every time you have a customer, you can send an email to that customer, make sure the onboarding gets some time. All of that can be automated. And I'm not going to get into that because you know much of that. But there's a bunch of things in your business that it's probably not important, not urgent. You can always eliminate those because your team that you're paying with money for their time, it's not good use of their time if it's not important, if it's not urgent. So automate, delegate, eliminate where possible. Sorry. Then it's also to say that most of the things that I'm showing you here today, you don't have to do them by yourself. For example, keeping metrics on your new hire, that's something your new hire can help you do. For example, if you want to measure the quality of your work, ask them to send an end of day report every single day. Hey, here's a template of an end of day report that I want to send. I just want you that by the end of your shift, you tell me what you worked on, what roadblocks you faced, and what's the status of the task that you normally work on. As simple as that. Then you are going to have on your inbox every single day something that can be traced, something that you can go back and you can see, okay, this day, I think this person worked hard. He made a lot of progress on X, Y, and Z. And maybe this other day, this person, I don't know, maybe was sick or something happened. Maybe it was a holiday or something, and this person didn't work as much. Let's keep a close eye on that in case that happens again. I can go back and maybe talk to that person and see what happened there and how I can help that person not to face that issue again, or see how I can help, right? And it's you're not doing anything, you're just reading an email, and that person is the one in charge of sending it. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to just have to read it. And last but not least, make sure that every single thing that you do, regardless of communication, accountability, traceability, remains yours. So knowledge retention is really important because let's all be, 100% honest. We both know your employee, it's probably going to work for you a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years, but then someday probably they're going to want to have their own business, or they're going to have another opportunity, or they're going to want to study something else. And it's going to be a time where somebody else has to come in and replace them. And you don't want that knowledge to be gone with them. You don't want that knowledge to simply disappear one day from the other. Or simply, also that applies to you. You don't want your team to work only when you're present. You want to go live your life, have vacations, and enjoy pretty much the joy of living without having to be in front of a screen 24/7. So make sure the knowledge it's retained, the knowledge it's organized in a way that everybody can have access to it. And it doesn't matter if you're present or if your teammates are present. Anyone can jump in, take a look at the library, take a look at the SOP, and get it done for you. It's just as simple as that. Great. So really quickly, let's talk about the common pitfalls of having a remote team. Things that we've seen most companies are doing wrong and how to avoid those. Number one, it's a spectrum, of course, that goes from micromanaging all the way to overtrusting without a system. There's people who are going to be micromanaging, who are going to be present in every single part of a process that the person is doing. This, of course, is not beneficial, again, because you, as a business owner, want to work on what gives you money. And if you hire somebody just to manage what they're doing every single time, you're just paying for somebody to show you how to do your work, and not necessarily you are growing at all. Micromanaging, unfortunately, doesn't work, doesn't make sense. It's just not efficient for your business. It's as simple as that. Systems, on the other hand, is what help you relay. It's what help you build something that lasts. It's what helps you scale. There's people on the other end of the spectrum that are simply going to overtrust their staff with tasks, but they're not gonna provide any system whatsoever for the task to be completed. For example, they might say, "Hey, yeah, here's my email, here's my credit card with a limit of $500 for expenses for you to buy stuff for the office, stuff like that. And here are the list of tasks that I want you to do," but they're not going to provide communication mechanisms. They're not going to provide track and trace systems for you or for them to see what is being done, what's not being done. They're not going to provide examples of how they want things to be done. That also doesn't work because it leaves a lot of uncertainty, and it's simply not beneficial for your company because there's no system in place. Next, we have onboarding poorly, and this is one of the most common mistakes. Most people, especially when they are starting in the remote world, or simply when you have a startup and you're starting to have the first batch of staff, you think that just because a person has the ability to manage the system that you bought, the CRM that you have, the tools that you normally use for work, let's say Adobe, InDesign, Illustrator, or Premiere, stuff like that. Just because I know that, it doesn't mean that you understand or they know how you like things done, or they understand or they know the values of your company, or they understand or they know your processes or the quality of the work that you want to come up with. You have to set a standard of what is it that you want to accomplish, be clear in that, and make sure that onboarding, it doesn't matter if it's 1 hour, 1 week, or 1 month, make sure that they understand that throughout the onboarding. Make sure that they match your standard. Sorry. Okay. Next one. Sorry about that. Assuming that silence equals alignment. So there's going to be times where you're going to be sending tasks. You're going to be telling your team to do something. You're going to be probably giving them feedback on something you like, something you didn't like. Silence does not equal acknowledgement or alignment with the process. Behind a silence, there could be 100 questions. Always make sure that when you provide piece of communication, when you communicate with your team, make sure that they acknowledge that what you're saying. Make sure questions are asked if there are any questions, but just do not stay with just silence. Silence means nothing. Neglecting team culture and informal connection. At the end of the day, this is something that we notice even on the interviews that you have in most cases with the talent at the beginning of when we do the hiring process. It's important to connect with the person that you're talking in front of, that you have in front of. Why? At the end of the day, you're working with people. You need to understand what motivate them in order to tap into the things that are going to help you get the most out of them. You need to understand their context. I'm not saying become their best friends. I'm not saying you have to be close to them. I'm just saying understand the basics in order to make sure you have a context that you can leverage when it comes to providing them with feedback, or when it comes to rewarding them, for example. So that's really key. And the summary of this call, it's really straightforward. It's don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Everything that I just said could be simplified if you lead by example. Make sure that all of this is in place. It doesn't, as I mentioned multiple times, it doesn't have to be you the one who actually create the systems, or the one who build the backend, who build the automations, who build the communication rules engine, the SOPs, so on and so forth. But you need to be the one who lead by example and establish the standard. At the end of the day, the team that you have, it's a reflection of who you are. If you are really straightforward when it comes to work, if you provide quality, if you work, and if your standard is quality, that's what your team will aim to. So that's pretty much the whole presentation. As always, you're more than welcome to contact us here at Allsikes. And now I'll give the floor to all of you in case that you have any questions, any doubts. I'm going to stop the recording right here. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.